In 2018, a pair of antique blood-splattered spectacles made its way to a DNA testing lab at the University of North Texas Health Science Center. 83 years prior to that, the specs had reportedly fallen from the face of the notorious gangster Bonnie Parker after her slaying on a rural Louisiana road. Parker was one half of the ruthless Bonnie and Clyde partnership that evaded law enforcement officials throughout the central United States during the Great Depression. Over a 2-year crime spree, the travelling pair robbed rural grocers, banks, and small-town gas stations, apparently with the goal of accumulating enough weapons to storm Eastham Prison, where Clyde Barrow had suffered abuse. During their 2-year odyssey, they were attributed with at least 13 slayings, with most believing that Barrow was the triggerman, with Parker as his willing accomplice. A 6-man posse, led by Texas Ranger Frank Hamer, finally targeted the couple in a roadside ambush on May 23, 1934, when the pair fatally sustained dozens of impact wounds. FBI archives later described Parker as a part-time waitress and amateur poet from an impoverished Dallas home who was bored with life. In retrospect, it was never proven that she even fired one shot, despite the extensive arsenal of weapons and ammunition found in the couple's car. She had also tried to set the record straight on a couple of other public misconceptions. An undeveloped roll of film found in their gang's abandoned hideout showed her posing with a cigar, leading to her image of a toughened femme fatale. In fact, she and her accomplices often released their hostages, sometimes with money to help them get home. In one such case, she instructed a captured police chief they had freed, "Tell the world I do not smoke cigars." Now the glasses allegedly worn by Parker during her final days had ended up in a health science centre laboratory. The economic vagaries of the collectibles industry had channeled them there. The glasses had been put up for auction and then judged to be worth a lot more if DNA testing showed that the dried reddish smudges on the lenses were from Parker's blood. The analysis was a difficult undertaking, even for the UNT Centre for Human Identification, which is known to be one of the USA's top DNA laboratories. Since 2003, the lab has examined more than 5,200 human remains and confirmed more than 1,700 DNA connections, which enabled sound identifications. In other work, the centre has processed more than 14,400 family reference samples for pursuing more than 8,000 missing person cases. There were several factors that complicated this investigation, including the age of the spectacles, exposure to the elements, and the probability that they had been handled by many different people. Dr. Bruce Budal, the centre's co-director, admitted to the many unique challenges in analysing dried blood that is nearly 85 years old. An added problem was that even if the DNA scientists could extract a clean sample, they could only verify it by comparison with the DNA of a genuine relative of Parker, who may be hard to find. Fortunately, discreet descendants of the infamous duo were able to be located. Raylene Linda, the 89-year-old niece of Bonnie Parker, did put herself forward. She has said that she resents Bonnie and Clyde for the stress they put their families through. Linda says that both came from good families, and that regardless of their romanticised history, they were still outlaws who did bad. Linda was named after her aunt, with her original name being Bonnie Ray Parker, but her namesake's role in ruthless crimes became too heavy a burden for a child to carry, especially so soon afterwards. Other children told her that they were not allowed to play with her, and she decided to go by the name Raylene in grade school. She says that her family hid from the notoriety and did not discuss it, but now the retired secretary, who lives in Garland, feels that living into her 80s gives her the freedom to speak of the association. Linda opines that Bonnie Parker aligned herself with a cop slayer and bank robber. Yet 80 years and an iconic Hollywood portrayal later, the couple's exploits have become almost heroic legend. A forensic geneticist obtained a swab from Linda's mouth to render a DNA sample, which could be compared with the apparent bloodstains on the old glasses. Bizarrely, Linda attended the centre with Buddy Barrow, a 76-year-old nephew of Clyde Barrow, who jokingly calls himself her chauffeur and bodyguard. At his home near Dallas, he keeps a trunk full of family heirlooms related to the gangster, insisting to his family that none of the niche memorabilia will be sold so long as he draws breath. Dr. Angie Ambers, the forensic geneticist who took Linda's sample, specialises in historical and archaeological investigations. One case required the exhumation of a guerrilla scout from the Civil War to discover if he had fathered a child with his American Indian maid. Another request saw her in Deadwood, South Dakota, after a home builder, constructing a retaining wall, uncovered the remains of a 19th century settler in the historic town. Another intriguing case examined 2 adult male skeletons found in the wreck of La Belle, a ship commandeered by the French explorer La Salle, which sank off the Texas coast in 1686. After the wreck was discovered in 1995, Dr. Ambers began working with a French genealogist using state-of-the-art DNA techniques to see if they could identify the skeletons. The Bonnie Parker spectacles were a special challenge. According to Bobby Livingston, Executive Vice President of RR Auction in Massachusetts, their authenticity was indisputable. The sheriff of Caddo Parish, Louisiana, recovered them after the ambush and kept them as a ghoulish keepsake until 1938, when he forwarded them as a gift to an Oklahoma oil magnate. The paper trail reveals that the oilman's family returned the spectacles to the sheriff's descendants in 1976. 20 years later, they were sold to a private collector in Massachusetts who was recently inspired to sell them through RR Auction in a themed gangsters, outlaws and lawmen sale. The auction house valued the glasses at upwards of $50,000, but to retain his auction house's credibility, Livingston decided to check if the red stains really came from Parker's blood. Dr. Ambers' laboratory work involved performing DNA extractions on swabs of both lenses and the rim of the spectacles. Preliminary analyses, however, indicated 2 major problems: insufficient DNA quantities for obtaining full profiles and some residue of a small amount of male DNA. These raised questions as to whether Barrow's DNA was mixed in, or even skin cells due to contamination from others handling the glasses. Dr. Ambers reported that the age of the glasses was not so much the issue at stake, but the fact that so many people had come into contact with them. It was the DNA mixture on the object which made deciphering difficult, further complicated by the fact that a family reference sample from a closer family member, like a sibling or mother, was unavailable. The inconclusive result led to Livingston removing the spectacles from auction, although future testing is possible if their owner decides to go ahead. Dr. Ambers is now able to proceed with additional evidence. She retrieved a single hair that was stuck to the lens and has further untested samples that may provide clean DNA in workable amounts. They are stored in a freezer at the centre, as well as the DNA sample from Linda. The very cold case is seen as a challenge by Dr. Ambers, who will perhaps solve some mysteries along the way. In the meantime, Linda and Barrow have been working to have the couple reunited, at least in their physical final resting places. Barrow has pointed out that a space was left for Bonnie next to Clyde, but her mother never agreed for her to be placed there. Their graves remain 9 miles apart in separate cemeteries in Dallas, posing simply a legal problem in getting Parker moved. Linda is emphatic that their wish was to be side by side. In fact, Bonnie Parker even stated it as a certainty in one of her poems entitled The Story of Bonnie and Clyde.